You're probably sitting there, scrolling through endless PA options, wondering if you're about to drop a good chunk of cash on something that will end up gathering dust in the back of the truck. I get that feeling especially when you've seen a few too many budget speakers that sounded great on paper, but fell apart the first night on stage. You want to know if the QSC KC12 BK column line array system actually lives up to the hype for your own gigs, without you having to guess whether you've made the right call. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's break down what this rig really brings to the table, where it shines, and where it might leave you wishing you'd gone a different direction. First off, the KC12BK is a self-contained column that uses a three-way driver configuration. That means you have dedicated drivers for low, mid, and high frequencies, all housed in a single upright cabinet. In practice, that translates to a more even dispersion pattern compared to a traditional box with a single driver stack. If you've ever set up a PA in a rectangular hall and found the front offstage audience getting a punchy, balanced sound while the folks near the back hear a thin, tinny version, you'll appreciate how the column's vertical array helps keep the coverage more consistent from floor to balcony. Now, who actually benefits from this design? Think of anyone who needs decent SPL without hauling a massive line array system. Small to mid-sized venues, churches, community theaters, or even a mobile DJ who wants a cleaner, more controlled sound than a pair of standard powered speakers. The KC12BK is rated for about 150 dB SPL, so you can push it hard enough for a 300-person room without distortion, and the built-in DSP handles the crossover and EQ internally, meaning you spend less time tweaking and more time playing. If you're a band that runs its own sound, you'll like the fact that the unit can be fed from a single stereo input and still deliver a full-range output that covers both the rhythm section and vocals. On the flip side, if your gigs routinely exceed the 300-person mark, or you're regularly playing outdoors where you need a lot of throw and low-frequency extension, the KC12BK might start to feel a little thin. The three-way configuration does a great job in the mids and highs, but the low end is still limited by the size of the cabinet and the single low-frequency driver. In those scenarios, you'll probably want to pair the column with a dedicated subwoofer, which adds another layer of gear, cabling, and setup time. That extra cost and logistical step is something to factor in if you're looking for a single-box solution. Weight and portability are another practical point that shows up when you actually load the rig into a van. Each column weighs around 44 pounds, which isn't a nightmare, but is definitely more than a typical 12-inch powered speaker. For a one-person road crew, that extra heft can add up, especially if you need to set up a pair of them plus a sub. The handles are sturdy, and the foot-adjustable spike system lets you level the unit quickly on uneven stages, but you'll still want a dolly or at least a strong pair of shoulders for the transport legs. If you're a freelance tech who moves from gig to gig, factor that into your planning. One of the hidden trade-offs with the KC12BK is its reliance on the internal DSP for optimal performance. The unit comes pre-configured with a default EQ curve that works well for many situations, but you'll get the most out of it by diving into the QControl app or the web interface to fine-tune the crossover points and adjust the high-frequency tilt. That's a plus if you like tweaking, but it's a step you have to remember to take before the first show. In my experience with similar QSC units, a quick calibration using a pink noise source and an SPL meter can tighten up the coverage dramatically. If you prefer a plug-and-play approach with no software at all, you might find the extra setup time a mild annoyance. Let's talk durability. The column's enclosure is made from a thick, molded MDF with a black finish that resists scuffs and light spills. In real-world terms, that means you can drop it off a stage ladder, slide it across concrete, and not worry about cracking the cabinet. The grill is replaceable, so if you ever get a dent or a torn mesh, you can swap it without sending the whole speaker back. That kind of serviceability matters when you're on a tight schedule and can't afford a week-long RMA cycle. Now, the value proposition. The KC12BK sits in a price bracket that's higher than a typical 12-inch powered speaker, but lower than a full-blown line array segment. What you're paying for is the integrated three-way design, the built-in DSP, and the relatively consistent vertical coverage. If you compare it to buying 3 separate speakers, a low-frequency unit, a mid-range, and a tweeter in, then adding an external crossover, the KC12BK actually saves you money on external.